issue, other than Mr. Egan and I discussed the issue about the selection of an individual, a particular individual, Dan Howe. He already serves this county in a contract capacity as a prosecutor for the district attorney's office. And when I, at least in my mind, and after some consultation with Mr. Howe, considered who here, and by the way, the statute requires someone who must be an attorney in good standing for 5 years in the state of California. And when we contemplated who in the local legal community we might be able to rely upon for fair adjudication, and mind you, I've known this man for 20 years, and he doesn't tell me what I want to hear necessarily. He's very plain about his analysis on cases. I am confident that he would be fair to all concerned. And that was my primary consideration in proposing his name. Again, I don't have any ownership. I just wanted to provide you with an option. If you have a different proposal, if you want to recruit or throw it open or do some selection process or the like, happy to do that. But I wanted to provide you with
one question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Did you consider anybody else? And do we have anybody else?
Well, did I consider? Yeah, sure. Did I meet with anyone? No. Did I answer your question, sir?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Where would these hearings take, provided there was a hearing, where would they take place at?
That's a good question.
Could be in this room, could,
Yeah.
at any room, any place that we designate, but it could be here, could be at the conference room, Rip Street as well.
Okay, I was just curious, because I mean, some of those could potentially get...
Could be in here.
There's nothing that would preclude the hearing officer from designating the location of the hearing at a place more convenient to the appellant, if you will. There's nothing that would preclude that.
So he can maybe go to Doyle,
Sure.
go to Westwood, go
Sure.
to Susan,
Sure.
wherever the...
You bet.
But he wouldn't necessarily go to Doyle if the guy he was having the hearing was from Beaver.
Well, I would certainly hope not, and if I know him, that would not occur. Sir.
So your discussion with him has been, he feels good about it?
Yes, yes. I specifically had a meeting with him to discuss this. We went over, essentially what we would expect, and what we would expect is fair application of the ordinance for all concerned, and most particularly assuring the Board of Supervisors, because that's essentially who would be appointing him, that the rights of the accused would be respected, at the same time the spirit of the ordinance being enforced.
Good.
And so what I wanted to mention was that there is a proposed contract for that purpose for a 1-year time period. And, it's for a 1-year time period. If the 1 year comes and goes, essentially this growing season, if you will, and the board is unhappy or it doesn't go the direction you like, a change can be made. We're not, let's say, married to them.
Just 1 year contract.
Yes, sir. Now, the contract that is in your packet, there have been some changes to in one area, and there's a whole bunch of copies that I put out on the desk here. No, I would like to, and I got wrapped up in my presentation about the hearing officer part, and I didn't pass these out. I'm sorry. There's one change, and it relates to the insurance issues that you just go ahead and leave them there for anybody to take. Thank you very much. The insurance issues that he's obliged to have, as you know, there is no county-wide standard insurance policy for independent contractors. The change essentially was that, and this should comport with his other contract that the county has, that the district attorney's office has, as I understand it, and that is that his individual carrier limit per incident is down to 500,000, but his aggregate amount is up from 1 million to 1.5 million. So it's kind of a change on two fronts there. The important point is that there's a hold harmless clause and indemnification clause in this contract that remains, which we would not agree to otherwise.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? We got a motion?
I have one other question. Is there a cap on this contract?
$5,000.
That's what I thought.
Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate meeting that cap or 100 or what's, I mean, I know this is all.
That's hard to predict.
It is very hard to predict.
Yeah, I've thought about that. And by the way, it's important to note, and this was in the document that was posted in the agenda, the payment schedule. The payment schedule contemplates a $1,000 payment to Mr. Howe at the beginning of the execution of the contract. And then, regardless of how many hearings he presides on, in fact, it would be paid initially. And then he would work against that $1,000 at $100 an hour up to the $5,000 cap. And so the $1,000 gets paid whether there's a hearing or not. And the reason that that was included that way was because of his the need to pay for his availability. If you recall from the marijuana cultivation ordinance, the enforcing officers are vested with the authority to schedule a hearing within 5 days' time. Excuse me, no shorter than 5 days, but right at 5 days. And that requires a certain guarantee on our part that we have that mechanism in place and can proceed that way. And that's the reason that that schedule was created that way. But I can't predict. I'm uncertain at this point how many. We're working towards gaining compliance from folks who, might otherwise not really want to, but see it out there anyways.
So that $100 an hour, would that apply to his travel to Westwood or Beaver or Doyle, wherever he goes?
Well, the contract contemplates $100 an hour for preparation for hearing and rendering decision and the like thereafter. So it's time spent on individual cases. I did not include that. Travel to and from hearing. I can do that if you like, or exclude that specifically, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
I mean, we're going in charge of water. I don't know.
Yeah, we really didn't expect that hearings would be going anywhere else other than the county seat. And in such a case, it would not be. He's on the clock when he arrives here.
How are you proposing to fund the $5,000?
I sought out the advice of Mr. Egan. Maybe you want to comment on that?
Sure. With regard to the point about travel, the contract was drafted with the presumption that the hearings would occur in county seat in Susanville. There wouldn't be any travel. So that's kind of a nuance that we can talk about. I guess I would recommend to contain our costs that we conduct those hearings here, so there isn't travel time.
And also, there's got to be some security issues about that also.
There may be.
Yeah, and
So I would suggest that we don't conduct hearings in other parts of the county. As far as the estimate of the $5,000, that is what we expect would cover the hearings, although we don't have any experience in the number of hearings that we might have. That would provide for 50 hours of the hearing officer's time. If we get to the end of that 50 hours, or it looks like we're going to get to the end of that 50 hours before the end of the fiscal year, we would have to revisit that. Hopefully we don't, but that's an estimate we made without having experience. Next year we'll have a better idea, I think.
Kind of a fine point, and not one that I think necessarily has to be made, but the contract didn't necessarily need to come to you, as it's within the purchasing authority of the CAO to execute. Nevertheless, transparency being what transparency is, I wanted you all to have a look at it, to know what's going on, that we're ramping up for possible hearings. We hope not, but we need to be ready, and that's why it was included.
No, Mr. Chairman, that was a wise choice to do that. But my question still hasn't been answered. How are we going to pay for the $5,000? What is the source of the funding? Is it coming out of the CAO's discretionary fund? Is it coming out of the board's discretionary fund? Is it coming out of a fund paid by fees from the growers? I mean, how is it being paid for? Is it something that the taxpayers are just going to pay for?
It will, will be recommended in my budget to the board that it be out of the general fund expenditures, probably out of the non-departmental budget unit, which will require action by the board for next fiscal year's budget.
And that's what I noted on the fiscal impact. That's what I noted on the fiscal impact of the agenda. But let's revisit, if we can, the marijuana cultivation ordinance, because if you recall, there's specific provision in there to lean the costs associated with hearings that occur and/or enforcement actions that occur. And it would be my expectation that, like we do in the abatement process, those are pursued and lodged. And
We up front the money for the abatement, and then we're faced to put a lien on the property to recover the
sometimes it's slow, but it persists.
Well, Nancy always did, Sir Guy.
If the fine is paid by the whatever, where does that money come?
That would also be a general revenue.
It'll go back to the
Medical providers.
Mrs. Smith, you have a question?
There's a reason why he's not going to give you the account number, because it's probably going to come out of the Chamber of Commerce fund again. There is no account number, and normally there are. So, you know, it's good that you want a penny down, because there is no account number, and it'll probably come out of the Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Burns has known Mr. Howe, like you said, over 20 years. And Mr. Burns also is very much aware, as I think all of you are aware, that he's in the middle of a capital murder trial. And the perception of this $5,000 at this time to Mr. Howe, when it could easily go something like this to Andrew Hout, who normally does your grunt work and your grunt contracts and your stuff. The perception of this $5,000 now to Mr. Howe is going to be looked at, and I know Can We Help has had a lot of emails and phone calls. I fielded a lot of phone calls about the intention and the purpose of Mr. Burns wanting to give Mr. Howe $5,000. He's going to need everything. Give it to David or Joe or Evans or whatever his name is. There's lots of people he could give it to for this type of administrative duty. But to give it to Mr. Howe, who is involved in a capital murder case that this man ignored 4 years ago, and now wants to maybe screw it up and distract him. I mean, it looks bad, and we're going to bring that back to you for every person that votes for Mr. Howe.
Whatever.
Thank you. I don't care whatever. That's it.
Thank you for your comment. If there's no cases, there will be no money spent.
Don't know, we're spending $1,000 for the.
Yeah, we have the initial $1,000.
Yes.
Okay, any more comments? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Any changes to the contract? Yes. What? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Get it here.
Yeah, I was late. Can I speak from here? Paul Staddy?
Yeah, we're like, what's your name?
Paul Staddy. Okay, now I'm having a mind block. This $5,000, is there any chance that this could continue for a second year, third year, et cetera?
if you like, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
The contemplated contract is for 1 year. I fully expect that we will have the need for a hearing officer in future years, and we will address that as the need arises.
So we could have one for a while.
I don't think we put a provision to extend this contract further.
There's no evergreen clause or the like. It's for 1 year. That's it.
All right, if by chance this individual bills $8,500 for the year, is he only going to get paid $5, or is the board going to honor all of his hours?
The contract is for $5,000, so
Right.
if the contractor provided services in excess of what the contract provides for, then that would be a problem for him. I don't see that
Well, you would have to come back and amend it,
Yeah.
get the contract amended. Hopefully do it before you spend the extra hours. We're only on the hook for the first 50 hours, basically.
Correct.
But like I suggested, if we end up in a position where it looks like we're going to need additional services of a hearing officer, we'll have to readdress that mid-year. But like I said, we don't have experience with how many violations, how many hearings, et cetera, that we may have, may need the services of a hearing officer.
And you may not spend 5,000. You may only have 20 hours worth of hearings, which means only 2,000 would be spent of the 5,000 in the contract. So
Right.
you're not going to automatically spend 5,000. It'll be driven by the actual activity.
Need.
Driven by the complaints.
And I do agree with Ms. Spencer. There are people, other people in the county, many people actually, that I think would be very qualified. I personally know people from both prisons who work the majority of their careers with drugs, drug dogs, in the field of that if they knew about this, might express an interest in helping the county.
Requires the person to be an attorney in good standing for more than 5 years' time.
Okay, I heard the 5 years' time. I missed the part in here about being an attorney.
That's not my requirement. That's the government code's requirement for the
Right.
establishment of the hearing officer.
Okay, I understand that. I didn't see
720,
it.
I think it is.
Okay,
answer your question.
that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The lady, that's
Yes, Lynn Haynes. I have a question about who would be the watchdog for the person that is the contractor. Because you can always, anybody can boost up the amount of hours and what they're doing. Who's going to monitor that?
I'll be administering the contract, for lack of a better word.
Mr. Reagan will be, Mr. Reagan and Mr. Burns, I'm sure will be keeping.
It's designated specifically in the contract that the CAO is the administrator of the contract for the county. Each professional services contract with the county typically requires the identification of an administrator. It's not uncommon for the CAO to be identified as that administrator. This is no exception.
One more question, Mr. Spencer.
Why in the world can't Mr. Burns be the hearing officer? We're paying him anyway. Why in the world can't he be that small little duty?
Because I identify, the position of county council identifies with one side or a party to the action, and it would kind of be like the Can We Help Executive Committee ruling on a public records request. Sorry, poor analogy, but it wouldn't, it would have a party to the action essentially making decisions about the action. And we need an independent, and that's what the whole provision is in the government code for an independent hearing officer.
So it doesn't need to be Dan Howe.
No, it doesn't need to be Dan Howe. I've made no bones about that. We made a suggestion. It's based on someone I know who I think will do a good, fair, even-handed job for both sides, and that's what's important, both sides. And that was the reason. If you have a different suggestion or want to go a different direction, perfectly content to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More questions?
I would just like to comment
State-
on,
state your
oh, I'm
name
sorry.
and recording.
It's Annie Westerbeck. And as a resident of Lassen County, it may be difficult for me, because I live in the city, to have medical marijuana, where the city is going to go back to the council, even though the Planning Commission did recommend at the last meeting that they do allow cultivation in the city. But if they don't, the Planning Commission also indicated that maybe we should, as medical marijuana patients, go to the county, or somehow go to the county people, and maybe that's, or move to the county, that might be an option. But there will be a need for people, if they do ban the cultivation in the city, to find their medicine, and it might be an option to have a dispensary in the county. Heaven forbid it should be in the city. And that it be taxed a certain amount, and the county could use that money for whatever it needed to administer the program, including the services of whomever you choose. So I'd just like to put that out because in the city we're running out of options if we can't grow and there is no dispensary. So that's something that we might revisit. Thank you.
Anyone McLean? I think this is going to get way out of hand. I think we're underestimating the issue. How did we all know that all these people who are needy of the medical marijuana, we didn't know much about them until this ordinance came about and people started showing up. So I think there's a lot of secrecy that's coming out from the individuals that want to have grow their marijuana because they want to be legal. So I think the administration of this, I think the administration of this is going to be way out, really big.
Do you think the $5,000 cap is unrealistic?
Yes. So, and I think to enforce it is going to be a monster on whomever is the enforcement agency or department. It's just that there's something about this. All right, I know something about this. I have two brothers that for the last 30 years have never been able to get off of it. You know, they're not in this county, thank God, and I don't see them that often. But I don't want to be around them. I've had a lot of hostile environment in a family situation that is just out of control. And so I think it's, like I say, I think there's a lot of secrecy going on, not with our department, but the people that really are using it. So to enforce it with the amount of money you have, I think it's too little, and I think it's going to be a monster for us to handle.
And what would you want us to do then?
What do I want you to do? I don't know how people are going to react to whatever they're going to do. I mean, I can't project what their feelings or anything. But I know once they get on this sort of thing, and they either use it for medical reasons, you know, or sell it to get money. But this doesn't seem like a wealthy business. Most of the people I see in it are just ordinary folks that have a minor problem, you know, type thing, and they just want to get rid of it.
Yeah, and I think the people we're after is not the person, you know, growing something in their home for themselves. It's the people that in Lake Forest that, you know, have 150 plants in the backyard, and they're telling us to shove it. You know, we're not going to do nothing. So we may have to enforce it. I think.
Well, I want you to enforce it.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want you. I want you to enforce it, but I just think the amount of money that you have is not enough, and I don't think you have enough enforcement people to take care of the issue.
Well, it's going to be a learning curve, I think. I mean, obviously it's going to be a learning curve, and we can come back to this in a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it takes. If it turns into what you're saying, I hope it don't.
So
I'm kind of looking at the opposite. I'm thinking it's not going to be that big of a deal because there's only a few people that are really, you know, breaking the law severely that we're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
That's Mr. Kelly.
And so, to be clear, the proposed contract deals only with the costs going to pay for the hearing officer's function at a hearing if we get that far. Certainly, there are other departments involved that aren't part of that $5,000 proposed cost. Building and planning services will be involved. There'll probably be deputy sheriffs that are involved at some point. Certainly, staff from county counsel's office will be involved. Those funds are already appropriated and are part of our normal functions that are going on. And then, you know, we've already set about the process of trying to educate, to inform folks who we believe may be cultivating marijuana, you know, in some perceived way in excess of what the ordinance now permits, by providing them with copies and discussing it with them and perhaps counseling about how it is that this board has chosen to act to exercise its police power to limit the nuisances associated with cultivation of marijuana. And through that process, we've already seen some folks genuinely interested in being in compliance, and we think that will be principally the way that it goes. But it won't be that way for everyone. We know that, or at least we expect that. And for those folks, we think that the prospect of having, administrative penalties imposed, we hope will be a motivating factor. There'll probably, of some of those, be folks who still don't want to comport themselves according to the ordinance. And in such a case, and we hope it's few, we hope it's none, actually, but we have to be ready. And that's the purpose for today's proposed action. Amen.
Okay. We have anybody prepared to make a motion to this contract, or you want to make changes to it?
Well, I would move that we appoint Dan House, a hearing officer, to preside over administrative hearings on this violation of Lassen County marijuana cultivation ordinance 2015-001.
Do we have a second?
Also,
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion from the board? Any more discussion from the public?
Not that you like hearing.
Okay, that's fine. Staff, anybody? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the board?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Oliver?
Aye.
Supervisor Huffman?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Kyle?
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's take our 5-minute break now, and we'll come back to board rules.